Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to look at another audio interface / DAC, digital to analog converter. And maybe you know that from my other videos on my channel. I can quickly show this to you here on my channel page. I have a bunch of different playlists, and in the audio playlist in the past I've reviewed a lot of different audio interfaces as well as microphones and so on. But normally these audio interfaces that I tested, they always have a microphone input or an instrument input. But today I switched things up a little bit and I got a DacMagic 100, a dedicated analog to digital converter from Cambridge Audio, and that should probably provide you with superior results just when you're listening to music. And I find that quite interesting. There's actually a lot of work that goes into designing these devices. You have like this PCB printed circuit board. I can show you an overlay shot over here, and as you can see, there are a lot of components and tiny parts on that board. So you can imagine if you are a PCB designer, an electrical engineer, you have to sit there and think about how to pick the individual components on the PCB, how to design the PCB itself, and then it has to go into manufacturing, quality control. So actually quite fascinating. And this DacMagic 100, I'm personally going to test this with my computer speakers, but I think in the US you call this RCA output. I think in Germany we say just change to it. So basically it takes a signal from your computer, for example, and converts it into an analog signal that you can listen to. And the Cambridge Audio, it is my understanding they have a different digital to analog converter in the other audio interfaces that I reviewed. So here in the top part, those are the usual audio interfaces. They very often have the Cirrus Logic chip, and the Cirrus Logic chip actually does both digital to analog. But the Cambridge Audio, I think, has a Wolfson chip, so I can show the exact number here. And yeah, that's a different chip. So combined with the different board layout, I think, and that it's made dedicated for just listening to music, I think that should be very interesting to test that. And if you're familiar with my videos, you know right now you're watching the introductory part. In part 2, that's next up, I'm going to do an unboxing, take the DAC out of the package, show you a few close-up shots of the build quality, and then usually with all my other videos in part 3, I'm going to do a microphone recording test. But since this is listening only, I'm just going to do a disassembly. So I'm going to take the unit apart and show you a few close-up shots, and we're quickly going to take a peek on what components are on the board, and I give you a quick, very basic overview so that you have a little bit of an orientation and can see, okay, what's actually behind that tiny little package that generates the sound for you. And it's not going to be super professional, it's just for beginners. So if you want to dip your foot in the water, so to speak, when it comes to a little bit more classy audio equipment, that might be a great way to start. Then I'm going to listen to the unit, I'm going to use the unit for a couple weeks, and then I'm going to give you feedback in part 4, in the summary and conclusion, what I think about this device. So excellent for tuning in, very nice. So let's get rolling with the unboxing. Now guys, awesome. Next up, we're going to have a closer look at the DacMagic 100 from Cambridge Audio, and as you can see, they come in different colors. I have the silver version. Obviously, there's a black version as well. So let's quickly flip this package over and open it up. Let's quickly look inside. We see some paperwork, quick start manual, and the DacMagic in this fancy blue packaging. Seems to be some fabric material, kind of interesting. Nice to see, so that makes it a little bit more premium. And let me quickly zoom in for you a little bit here. Maybe the camera shakes a little bit. I hope this shows correctly. Let's bring it in focus. I'm testing a new camera, so it's a little bit unusual to work with this new system, but you can see on-off button, source button, so you can select between USB, SPDIF 1, 2, and Toslink. And I think that's also something I would like to test in just a second. In my case, I'm primarily going to use it with the USB input to get a signal from the computer. And that's also something I looked up in the computer. Lots of signals get generated. So apparently the USB signal that comes from your computer is not really that clean. So if you were to power the device via USB, ideally some of the higher end devices, they have filters in here so that you can, if there's noise in the USB signal, they can actively or passively filter that out. And here we get an additional power supply as well. So I think that may also improve the sound. Some people, they really swear by the power supply, and actually that's the Japanese type. So let's quickly find the different adapters you have in Europe. I think it's the British adapter. I'm in Germany, so I have the German adapter. Let's quickly snap this on. I think it's a great setup if you're planning to travel. And what I wanted to say is, obviously you could also, in addition to use it with your computer, for example, take a fiber optic cable and let's say connect it to your Apple TV. So I think that's also something I'm going to test in part 3B. Once I disassemble it. So in the next part, I'm just going to disassemble the unit, show you a few shots from the board itself, what chips are on there. It's nice to see that. I also saw another guy on YouTube who removed some components. I think he removed the operational stage amplifiers, as well as the, guys, English is not my first language. I think you call it condenser. So basically he removed some parts and we replaced them with higher parts, and took a badass power supply and really got the most out of this thing. I mean, I'm not gonna mod it or anything, but I want to show you what's inside. So that's what we're gonna do next in part 3. And I'm back again. I cleaned the desk up and I quickly had to look for this tool because it's not a Phillips screwdriver that you need. I think you call it hex. I'm not exactly sure the exact size, but I just had this lying around. So as you can see, it's a very compact interface. Digital to analog converter. And let me just quickly remove those 4 screws and then we can take a peek inside the unit. Zooming in for you a little bit here so that you can see that close up, how tiny that is. So it's probably also a good unit for portable if you're traveling a lot. I'm quickly going to do all 4 and then I'm going to be back and we're going to look at the PCB and the chips that are on here. You got to be careful, and we can already see the PCB with the various components. And let me quickly take my pen and then I can show you what I see. So first of all, back here, the USB input that comes in here, digital signal goes to the processor. Usually what I'm used to seeing is the processor is often, let me turn this around, maybe that's more of a logical angle. The processor often it's the ARM or it's the XMOS. So that almost looks like an XMOS from the size. Maybe they just put a sticker on there. I wouldn't be surprised that maybe an XMOS. And then the digital to analog converter looks like this is I think what I read is the Wolfson. Don't quote me on the model, I can put that in the video description. In any case, the signal comes in here, goes to the processor. From the processor, it should go to the digital to analog converter. And then here it gets amplified and put out to your speakers with the RCA connectors. What I essentially saw is like one guy, or I should say one gentleman, he upgraded the operational stage amplifiers. I think this is how you call it in English, as well as those, I think you call it capacitors, with real big, nice big ones. And he also had a massive power supply. And that got even more performance out of this little nice compact DAC. So just the point that I want to make is for you, if you're a beginner and if you're new to maybe a little bit more expensive, you want to dip your foot into the water with a little bit more premium digital to analog converters, you don't want to use your internal sound card, then what you can notice is that obviously there's somewhere is a designer that designs this printed circuit board. And then maybe in conjunction with someone from management or accounting, they look, okay, this component costs that much. If we use this, we come out at this price point. And if we use a 2-layer PCB, it's cost us that much. If we use a 4-layer PCB. And so they plan accordingly, they design it. And obviously, if you have a 4-layer PCB, a gold-plated 4-layer PCB or something, it's going to be more expensive or complicated to manufacture. Similarly, if you're using bigger capacitors or if you're using a more complicated board layout. I saw one other company that actually, I think they split the digital part and they split the analog part, and they even had some screening element in the middle. So I'm not a PCB designer, but I find this quite fascinating how you have like these software guided tools where you can, inside the computer, you can plan everything where something is routed, and then you just send it off to the manufacturing and they print the circuit board, and then you have these really advanced robots that put all the parts, that I think you call them pick and place robots. So very, very, very interesting. And I'm convinced in the decades to come, PCB design is going to be a big deal, especially when it comes to smart homes as well, because you can basically, if you are trained in electrical engineering and this PCB design, you can create some really interesting stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if one day we have a lot of networked PCBs that can do crazy stuff in your home. But I digress, it's supposed to be about this audio device. So that's all I wanted to show you in part 3A. Just a quick overview and maybe tell you, okay, this is the processor, this is the digital to analog converter. So let's jump to the practical part 3B, where I connect the Cambridge Audio DacMagic 100 to my computer. And we're going to jump into the computer, I show you what's going on there, and then we're also going to test it with the Apple TV. And then after using it for a while, I'm going to give you my impression in summary and conclusion in part 4. So let's jump to the next part. And yeah guys, right now we jumped into the computer to test part 3B, and let me quickly show you. I just connected the DacMagic. So guys, if you're on the Windows, obviously the settings usually should be the same. Maybe if you have never used Mac before, it's kind of interesting to see. You basically just go to utilities and the audio MIDI setup, and then you can see all the audio devices that are connected to your computer. So right now I'm recording with my old Firewire interface. Also I have the monitor here connected via DisplayPort, and down here, instead of using the internal sound card of my Mac Pro, I can now use the Cambridge Audio DacMagic. And as you can see, I have a bunch of settings that I can pick here. That's also something you might want to consider if you're new to a little bit high quality audio gear. Maybe pay a little bit attention to what kind of files you have. Are you listening to online radio, usually the free online radio, or a lot of stuff that you might have purchased in iTunes may only have 4.1. So personally, I'm going to leave it on the lowest settings because most of my source material is like this. But obviously there are also more premium audio services where you get like real high quality stuff that's recorded in 24-bit and 96 or 192 hertz. So what I quickly wanted to show you, if I switch that, actually, that's my first impression of the Cambridge Audio DacMagic 100. And what we're gonna do next, I'm just gonna test the Apple TV a little bit, and then I'm going to listen, going to use the DacMagic for a while, and in part 4 I'm just going to give you my summary and conclusion, what I think about this little bit more premium audio DAC compared to your internal audio interface. So let's quickly look at the Apple TV. Then on the DacMagic itself, you can see the different settings that should switch over as well. So let's go one higher to 48, and as you have seen, it jump one over and back to the highest possible setting that I can pick on a Mac. It's 96, although it says 192, so I cannot select that on my Mac. Not sure what the reason is. Maybe you can only get that via the Toslink, for example. So I think in a second I'm just going to connect the Apple TV as well, and then we're going to see what kind of settings we can get out of my little bit. I think there's a 2nd gen Apple TV, so there's a newer one already, but obviously you can also select the input source right here by pushing the source button. So in my case, I could use the device with the computer, and then at a moment's notice, if I want to switch over to the Apple TV, I just push the source button and I go to the Toslink, and I can get the signal in there via fiber optics. So now guys, here my test setup for the Cambridge Audio DacMagic 100 together combined with the Apple TV and the computer. Obviously I put a ferrite bead around my USB cable from the computer, so that's maybe like a little bit of a crazy hack to keep the USB signal a little bit cleaner. However, here you see the Apple TV, power, HDMI, the optical Toslink cable and network connection. And it's really nice, you can switch between those two, meaning the sound coming from the USB of the computer. So I turned the computer off and it immediately detected, okay, Toslink, and it set the Apple TV to 48. So that's the signal that I'm getting with this generation of Apple TV. And I'm pretty convinced that obviously you could connect the Apple TV, for example, directly to your stereo or speakers, but the digital to analog converter in the Apple TV, I think, is not nearly going to give you as nice of a sound as if you're using an optical cable and have a separate digital to analog converter that's a little bit more premium. And yeah, I played around in the menu a little bit. And so far it seems very promising. Everything works fine. It's really just plug and play. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this for a while, listen to some music, do some tests, and then in part 4 I'm going to be right back giving you feedback of what I think about this combination. But yeah, I mean, you can see you can use it for your computer as an audio interface or maybe with your stereo system. So it's really versatile and compact, and that's what I'm going to test now. And I'm going to be right back in part 4, summary and conclusion. Terrific, guys. This concludes my test of the Cambridge Audio DacMagic 100. I used it for a while and did listening to a bunch of music, watched some movies. And overall, I'm very happy because for my testing, I found it to be a really versatile device. On the one hand, I can use it with my Mac Pro to get a little bit higher quality out of it. On the other hand, I also can use it, for example, with my TV or stereo system and watch movies on it to get a little bit more crispness and clarity out of the sound. Obviously, you want to make sure you have the appropriate cables. I think you call this RCA connector. I always say chinch to that. And maybe if you have an optical device for the Toslink, you have the fiber optic cable. So obviously I showed you in the unboxing what's included. The cables are not included, but my conclusion really is that for people on the one hand that want to use it with a computer or more stationary use with your stereo system, the DacMagic works great at an affordable entry-level price. While on the other hand, I think for people who want something portable, I mean, the device is small, but what it lacks is really the headphone output. And I think people who are on the go a lot, they would really appreciate a headphone output. So this is more designed for stationary use, in my opinion. Guys, this concludes the test of the Cambridge Audio DacMagic 100. Overall, I give it a thumbs up. If you want to use it at home, for on the go, I would be more on the cautious side. Obviously, you also need the power supply. So that's another thing people who are looking for. If you're looking for something mobile, also make sure that you have the headphone output and that you can draw the power the unit completely via USB. So that's not the case here. But for at home, it's really good. And I also invite you to head over to my channel page. I show this to you here. And in the playlist audio, you find a bunch of other devices that I tested. In the past, I always did the classical USB audio interfaces. Usually a lot of the time they have the Cirrus Logic chip, although I didn't open up every unit that I tested, but that's also a difference. Here it uses the Wolfson chip, and I think I can show this to you here once more. So you see this is the Wolfson chip, and this one sounded neutral as well with the Wolfson chip. Guys, I digress. You have learned something new, and I see you as a subscriber, and in the next video. Have fun, all the best to you, take care. And because you just watched a review of the DacMagic 100 USB audio interface, you might also be interested in comparing it against a little bit more widespread known interface such as this Red Focusrite, which I also recently reviewed on my channel. And you can find more audio equipment videos on my channel page in the audio playlist. Guys, you can subscribe right now as well, as many people have done before you. I see you in the next video. All the best to you, and let me know what else you want to see. Take care.